The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walked this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, we will call the special council meeting for January 10th, 2024 to order. First item of business is adoption of the agenda. Council, this is a special meeting, so there's no changes to the agenda. Can we have a motion? Floor. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that we adopt the agenda of the special meeting of council for January 10th, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, the motion on the floor is that council adopts the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, council, please vote now. Councillor Taylor, did you? Okay, Councillor Taylor's voted by hand. That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 3 or section 3 on the agenda, new business, and item 3.1, the Hinton Employment and Learning Place Warming Center proposal. CEO Panasiuk.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So the report that was sent to you shortly before this meeting, the report outlines, or it's a continuation of the conversation that we were having yesterday related to what role did the town want to play when it came to warming shelters. There's limited ability at this time for the Hinton Employment and Learning Center to provide this service on their own, with temperatures from tonight until about Sunday night. The temperatures will dip into what is considered dangerous territory for those who may be homeless. And we brought forward a report on a discussion for council to have on what involvement we wanted to, or how much involvement we wanted to have in this type of program. Right now, we are, our recommended action based on conversations with the Help Foundation is that we approve $7,000 in funding from the council contingency fund for the Hinton Employment and Learning Place emergency shelter for homeless clients from January 10th through January 14th. So these costs were based on an estimate of approximately 20 people for, I believe it was 5 nights at $70 a night for a hotel. So, you know, this is a something that could be implemented immediately, including tonight, and we would be able to implement this further. There are some, there is a secondary motion that is being put forward, and that is more, and that motion is to direct administration to work with the Help Foundation in order to work towards a more permanent solution or a more permanent program or relationship when it comes to warming shelters or how we deal with extreme weather events in the future. But if there are any questions, it'd be me or a member of my staff maybe able to answer.
Thank you, CEO Panasiuk. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make the recommended action. The council approves $7,000 in funding from the council contingency fund for the Hinton Employment and Learning Places emergency sheltering of homeless clients from January 10th to January 14th, 2024 inclusive, and that council direct administration to return with a report to a future meeting of council with options to assist the Hinton Employment and Learning Place with their insurance costs for extreme weather sheltering of homeless clients for the rest of 2024. And honestly, I think those motions stand on their own. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon. And administration, did we get all of that recorded? Excellent. Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding funding from council contingency fund, can you remind me what the council contingency fund is set at for 2024? And if this is drawn from there, what that would do to the balance?
CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So there is the budget that council contingency was taken from 10 to, or sorry, from 20,000 to 10,000. And then I believe there was one commitment so far for 2024, and that was Ms. Juke. Can you tell me how much that was for?
Yes, CEO passed $1,800 for the sponsorship of the chamber signature
Okay.
events.
Yeah. So $1,800 for sponsorship for the chamber events. And so the current outstanding level of the council contingency fund is 8,200. So this would leave about $1,200 left in that fund, in the council contingency.
So I could speak to it, Mr. Mayor. I'm not necessarily in opposition to providing the funding, but I'm not sure council contingency is the right place to bring it from. That leaves us $1,200 for the rest of the year for any outside requests for funding that come to council through the rest of the year. I'm not sure that that's a responsible use of the vast majority of that fund in the first 10 days of 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Counselor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess then following up on Councillor Ostashik's concern, would it be possible by a vote will of council once, if there was a better place after today, because I think timing is a bit of a consideration here, that council thought was more appropriate, could council not transfer from that location funds back into the contingency fund to, forgive the phrase, top it up?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor, I'll look to our finance director, who is not here. My apologies. So, you know, through to council, one of the recommendations I would make on this, if we do not want to, you know, we were looking for options within budget, but we do have midterm budget adjustments. This can certainly be one of them. If we wanted to make this adjustment for 2024 in likely March of this year. So we could certainly have a motion from council to include this as a budget adjustment for that time. And then we would be able to budget in a separate location. It would not come through the council contingency.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Counselor Taylor.
I'm in favor. I think we have to do something now to help out. When this passes, I would make another motion that because I believe that this is a provincial responsibility that is kind of being downloaded on us, that any expenses that we would have, we would pass those on to Martin Lawn to try to get paid through the provincial government. I don't think that we can keep taking provincial responsibilities on and keep taxes low and provide the essential services that we need. The provincial government has to step up. Sending them a bill for $7,000, $8,000 and asking Martin Lawn to take care of it is an obligation I think we have. That's what I'm going to do when this is through.
Thank you, Counselor Taylor. Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So question to administration. Following up on the concerns regarding council contingency fund and the balance that would be left after. Since this is primarily a community safety concern and to me, that would be the best fit for it. My question would be is what would the balance be in our safety reserve, and if it could be drawn from the safety reserve rather than council contingency?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, I don't have the specific numbers of that particular reserve here. But we could find out very quickly what that level is at, and um, I'm very confident that we would be able to accommodate a $7,000 expenditure to that fund fairly easily, but I don't have the exact number in front of me.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Follow-up?
If I may.
Please.
When you say you could find out fairly quickly, like how quickly, a matter of minutes? Because if we can find out in a matter of minutes, I would want to make an amendment to change it to funding from the safety reserve.
Through the mayor, yes, if we could have a 5-minute recess, I could track that number down. I believe we could get you a specific number.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. We will recess for, we'll give them 5 to 10 minutes, so 7 minutes. We'll be back at 20 after. And this special meeting of council will come back to order at 4:19. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have looked at the safety reserve, which has $23,528 dollars in it. What I would recommend though is we also have an emergency response reserve account, which is typically used during an ECC activation, but we have 931,742 in that reserve account, and I would say that this is it would likely fit the best within that reserve account if we are considering this in a emergent situation. I think it would fit. Yeah, I believe that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, please. I'd like to move to remove council contingency fund from the motion and replace it with emergency response reserve. I can
Thank-
speak to it really quickly. I think that's a more appropriate place to draw the emergency funding from. And it does leave council's contingency fund whole moving forward through 2024. So we do have the ability to consider other extraordinary requests for funding that might come before us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. So council, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the original motion, removing the language council contingency fund and replacing it with emergency response reserve. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll call the question on the amendment. In a few moments. So council, again, we're voting on the amendment to change the wording from council contingency fund to emergency response reserve, and council, please vote now. And Councillor Taylor is voting for by hand. That motion carries unanimously. Can we get the original motion back up on the screen, please, for a moment? So council, the motion on the floor is that council approves $7,000 in funding for the from the emergency response reserve for the Hinton Employment and Learning Places emergency sheltering of homeless clients from January 10th through January 14th, 2024, inclusive, and that council direct administration to return a report to a future meeting of council with options to assist the Hinton Employment and Learning Place with their insurance costs for extreme weather sheltering of homeless clients for the rest of 2024. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about how the program would work. Are the 20 rooms booked, reserved, and paid for regardless of demand, or are they booked and utilized based on demand by clients coming forward? And I guess the extension of that question is the $7,000 guaranteed to be spent in booking and holding and reserving those rooms? Or could it be a portion of it is spent depending on demand, and that we would retain the balance of the portion that's not spent?
CEO Panasic.
So if I may, I'm going to We do have members of the audience here that are from HELP, but I will estimate that the organization will fulfill their obligations with the homeless clients and bill us afterwards for the amount that is expended to a maximum of $7,000. I expect that that would probably be the best way to.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Stashik.
I know generally we don't look to the gallery for comments from people who are in attendance, but because this is such a short prep time, I know administration likely didn't have time to make sure that they had fully collected all the information that they could from HELP. So at the mayor's discretion, would it be okay to consult with the representatives from HELP to confirm that Ms. Duke's assumption is correct?
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. And actually, in the break, I had a discussion with the officials from HELP, and they did inform me that this is an up to situation.
Okay, I'm fine with that then. Great.
Thank you,
very much.
Councillor Stashik. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's no one else in queue, I do have an additional amendment I'd like to propose.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to add to the first portion of the motion at the end of it, after inclusive, and that a report detailing utilization during this period, comma, outcomes and other learnings from this temporary program be brought to a future meeting of council prior to consideration of additional funding for similar programming. And if I could just speak to it quickly, Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. I think it's important information for council to get back on how the program's utilized, how many clients form a part of it. If there's any suggested changes, something that would work better potentially, any drawbacks, just any information that we could get regarding that could help us better inform, future funding, future programming that may be up for consideration. And I think it's obviously important to have that before that future consideration is on the table. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stashik. So council, the motion on the floor is an amendment to the already amended motion that adds a section that states, and that a report detailing the utilization during this period, outcomes and other learnings from this temporary program be brought to a future meeting of council prior to consideration of additional funding for similar programming. Council, any discussion? And I can't see Councillor Chambers if she's indicating no. Okay, council then, please vote on the amendment now. Councillor Taylor voting in favor makes this carried unanimously. So council, the motion on the floor now is that council approve $7,000 in funding from the Emergency Response Reserve for the Hinton Employment and Learning Places emergency sheltering of homeless clients from January 10th through January 14th, 2024, inclusive, and that a report detailing utilization during this period, outcomes, and other learnings from this temporary program be brought to a future meeting of council prior to consideration of additional funding for similar programming. and that council direct administration to return a report to a future meeting of council with options to assist the Hinton Employment and Learning Place with their insurance costs for extreme weather sheltering of homeless clients for the rest of 2024. Council, any further discussion? Can we just confirm with Councillor Chambers that she's not trying to? Excellent. Thank you. Councillors, please vote now. Councillor Taylor voting for by hand brings that motion is carried unanimously. Council, any further business on this topic? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank council very sincerely. Yesterday, I sprung this on them with very little information to back it up. So I'm extremely grateful for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that any any expenses related to our homelessness warming expenditures be given to our local MLA for discussion and possible payment. Might not be possible to pay it, but we should certainly be talking about it unless we're getting reimbursed for this already, which I don't think we are. But this is a provincial download and we can't keep taking provincial downloads. They have to accept their responsibility, and this is one way of trying to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So council, the motion on the floor is that any expenses related to our homelessness warming shelter be brought to our MLA for discussion on reimbursement.
Possible reimbursement.
Council, any discussion? Councillor Race.
I certainly will support this. You don't know what the outcome is going to be if you don't ask the question. I do have a question for administration though. If I may.
Please.
What is our responsibility at a time like this? Like the municipality's responsibility?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council. So this is not part of our traditional mandate. I would say that this is more of a political mandate item. We have municipalities have a general responsibility to create safe communities. So really that's what we're all relying on here. Our legal mandate does not include these types of programs. Typically, our role in these things is preventative in nature and not an intervention measure. But as I said before, we do have general obligations on or general duties to provide a safe and viable community. And I would say that this likely fits within that definition. And it also complies with our natural person's powers as municipality to be able to do these types of things. So I wouldn't say it's a legal mandate that we must do this, but it's certainly not abnormal for municipalities to participate in this type of programming.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be speaking in support of the proposed motion. I think even just bringing it to the MLA brings it to his attention and hopefully further on to the provincial government that they are not properly supporting their mandate for regarding proper funding of social services. Protection of vulnerable populations is a component of that. And I believe that they are delinquent and they are not properly supporting what they need to do to make sure that those portions of our population and the population throughout Alberta who are at similar risk are protected and are funded appropriately. It's unfortunate when social service agencies feel like they have to go to their municipality to get emergency funding for things like this because they don't have access to proper provincial funding to run programs like this as the body who should be funding these types of programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. Counselor McGoon, are you still wishing to be in queue?
Just briefly,
Counselor
I-
McGoon.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only to the point to say that Counselor Ostashik hit it right on the head, right? Is that and I want to thank Counselor Taylor for putting the motion forward. It's a downloading of responsibilities that, at the end of the day, it affects human beings, and that just can't be allowed to continue. And I think this is the appropriate way that the municipality has leverage to go and talk to our MLA and say, no, look, well, there's a real problem here. You can't just ignore it. Honestly, I think this is a reasonable approach. So thanks.
Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. I'm not really sure if it's for administration or Counselor Taylor, who would be for. As I said, I am in support of this, and it would just be a process question of how would something like this typically be handled? Would it be an invoice accompanied by a letter from the mayor, or how would something like this work?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor, because I think a lot of this is, I see this a lot as an advocacy item. Typically if a municipality is just looking for simple reimbursement, they're going to look to the DRP program. This type of situation, it will not be eligible for that type of program. So really, what I believe is we should develop an invoice with a supporting letter that would actually explain our position and what we're after and the rationale for providing that invoice to them. So I think that is how I see us handling this type of this motion.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question that council direct administration that any expenses related to our homelessness warming shelter be brought to our MLA for possible reimbursement. Councilors.
Sorry, point of information, Mr. Mayor?
Counselor McGoon.
I just want to confirm with Counselor Taylor. I believe he had included be brought to our MLA for possible discussion and reimbursement. Just because right now the motion says just for possible reimbursement. So I didn't want to lose that discussion piece.
I believe that's what I heard as well. So thank you, council. So yeah. Thank you, Counselor Taylor. We're getting there. Okay, so the motion as written, the council direct administration that any expenses related to our homelessness warming shelter be brought to our MLA for discussion and possible reimbursement. And Counselor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess that brings me then back to the process question. I was, quite satisfied, and I thought the process suggested by CEO Panasic of an invoice with an accompanying letter explaining the rationale and everything was a fine way to go about it, and that it could lead to potential follow-up. So I guess my question then is, with the discussion component that's been added in, what would be the process to accommodate the discussion portion of it?
CEO Panasic.
Through the mayor to members of council, I think it as a part of an accompanying letter, we will request a follow-up meeting to actually sit down with MLA Long and to have a discussion about this as a broader topic. The invoice as well, but also future support. So, we would invite for a future meeting with council representatives.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor Ostashik. Council, anything further? Seeing nothing, we'll call the question that council direct administration that any expenses related to our homelessness warming shelter be brought to our MLA for discussion and possible reimbursement. Council, please vote now. And that motion carries unanimously. Council, anything further on this item? Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my question is, there's a difference between a warming shelter and sleeping over. And I would think a hotel would fall in the second category. So here we're talking about warming shelter and the money that we're paying for a warming shelter. This is not a warming shelter. It's a, what would we call it?
Thank you, Counselor Race. CAO Panasic, with the with the motions that have passed today, are you comfortable that that fits the bill for what you need to do, or do we need to adjust somewhere here?
Through the mayor, members of council, yes, I think our primary goal here was to get people out of the cold in very short order. But when we do come back with a report, we will be including probably a number of different options of how we could participate, because I know at one point there was discussion about just simply an overnight warming shelter where people could come in on a temporary basis, warm up, and then leave again. But being that that is overnight, that's also a difficult program. But we'll look into all of those different options when we bring that back to council to take a look at what programs are out there, what type of program do we want, and what level of involvement is council comfortable with. So all of those options or a full complement of those options will be brought forward. But right now, my best definition would be to classify this as overnight accommodations for the next, I believe, 5 days.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Counselor Race. Thank you, CAO Panasic. Counselor Stashik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, understanding that this was put together really quickly, so I'm not at all casting any, fault or blame or anything. But the second portion of the motion that council just passed was just to consider options to assist help with their insurance costs. And I would actually prefer a more comprehensive, higher level overview of a bunch of different options like CAO Panasic just suggested. So would it be prudent to make an additional motion to include other options with that report when it comes back? Because technically right now it's just for insurance.
CAO Panasic.
Through the mayor, certainly we could include just, maybe some broader direction just to provide a full complement of options. That could even be a separate motion if council would prefer. We do have a motion to look at assisting specifically with the insurance. We could also include a separate motion if council's comfortable to look at a full complement of options when it comes to extreme weather sheltering for homeless.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Counselor Stashik, follow up.
Good. No, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon.
Then just for the clarity and transparency for the public record, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make that motion. But because that really, it's an administrative direction. If the CAO is comfortable transmitting the wording specifically to Ms. Davy Campbell, I'll happily read it. Provide a full complement of options in regards to warm. In truth, I couldn't write fast enough to get all the wording down. So I would like to move that council direct administration to bring back a full complement of options for extreme weather sheltering for homeless clients. And it's been spoken to. I just would like to make sure that it gets through. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Magoon. Council, any discussion? Can we just confirm with Counselor Chambers? Excellent. Thank you, Council. So the motion on the floor is that Council direct administration to bring back a full complement of options for extreme weather sheltering for homeless clients. Councilors, please vote now. Counselor Taylor voting affirmative by hand. That brings the motion carried unanimously. Council, anything further on item 3.1 on our agenda? And that brings us to item 4, and CAO Panasic, can you confirm there are no closed session items on this agenda?
Through the mayor, that's correct. There are no closed session items.
Thank you. That brings us to section 5 and 5.1, the call for adjournment. Councilors. Counselor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Counselor Race. Council, the motion on the floor is a move to adjourn. Councilors, please vote now. And that motion carries unanimously. Council is adjourned at 4:43. Thank you, everybody.